Hello everyone, and welcome to Right Wing Rising. Please be sure to like this video down below before you are finished watching, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. In today's video of my 240 to Win series, we're going to be focusing on the state of Iowa. And since the turn of the century, Iowa has been a very swingy state. It's been a battleground and always competitive, always talked about on the list of competitive states at the presidential level. It has leaned Democrat for a long time, but it's still been competitive. It's never been a state that Democrats have had a solid hold on. But in recent election cycles, the opposite has been true. Republicans have started to solidify it into their column. It has the distinction of being the first state to vote every 4 years in the primary cycles for both parties. So it is usually a testing ground for candidates that are interested in exploring runs for the presidency to test the waters and interest for their possible campaign, their message, and the issues that they want to run on and base their platform off of. And it has been long thought that if you can find success and your message resonates in Iowa, it usually will translate well to the national stage and you'll have a chance to win the nomination as well as the general election, since this state shares similarities with other competitive and key states that need to be won to ascend to the presidency. In the last 6 presidential elections before the turn of the century in 2000, Democrats won Iowa in 4 of those 6 races, with the only 2 losses being in the Reagan years. And in 2000, Al Gore narrowly squeaked out a win in the state by the skin of his teeth and a 0.3 percentage margin. But then 4 years later, George W. Bush won re-election and won in the state, flipping it into his column, winning by a little over a half a point. Then in 2008, Obama came along and swept the state into his column, shifting it 10 points to the left and winning by 9.5 percentage points. And although he won it by a couple points less in 2012, he still carried the state by a 6-point margin. Very impressive victories in a state that had been razor close in the Bush years. But then Trump came along in 2016, and the state did a complete 180. Just like Obama in 2008, he won the state by 9.5 points, and proceeded to hold the state comfortably by 8 points in 2020, despite it being predicted to be much closer, and swing back in the Democratic direction. In fact, Trump actually increased his vote share from 51% in 2016 to 53%. His margin of victory only simply shrunk because of a decreased third-party vote share, and Biden improving upon Hillary Clinton's margin by over 3 points. It was still viewed as a swing state in 2020, despite Trump winning it handily in 2016. There were many close polls that undershot Trump massively, and Biden even led a lot of polls in the state. But now, it's viewed as a solid red state. There's not even being much polling conducted there. Trump was crushing Biden there by more than 10 points before Biden dropped out of the race. And Harris probably won't do much better. The state's population is 85% white, 70% Christian. Agriculture and manufacturing are key cogs in the economic wheel that drives the state, and it's part of the Midwest Rust Belt. So a lot of voters in the rural areas, and a lot of working class and middle class voters compared to a lot of other states. Not really the kind of demographics that you would expect a progressive liberal like Kamala Harris to do really well in. And you would especially not expect her to do better than Joe Biden, who in 2020 was seen as your much more run-of-the-mill, establishment, old-school Democrat, not someone who was as far left as Kamala Harris. So you could even see Trump get 55% of the vote and win by 10 points or more. I think this is the year that he does it. Iowa trended right in 2020. The nation moved left by 2.5 points overall. Iowa only moved left by 1.5 points. That means it trended to the right by 1 point. The nation is expected to swing to the right in the national popular vote this year, so look for Iowa to to swing to the right by at least a couple points, which should give Trump an even more commanding victory. Trump is already all but expected to win the state of Iowa. So for his own campaign, the margin is not that important, but it will do wonders for Republicans down ballot if he can increase his margin of victory from 2020 and substantially at that to a win of 10 points or more, because there are some competitive House races down ballot. The House delegation has seen some turnover in Iowa in the last couple cycles. Democrats actually won the popular vote in the state in 2018 by 4 points. And it was the first time in 8 years that they claimed a majority of the House seats in the state, picking up 2 to gain a 3-1 majority in that delegation. Republicans underperformed Trump at the House level in 2020, only winning the popular vote by 6 points compared to Trump's 8-point victory statewide. But they did flip back 2 seats to gain back a 3-1 majority in the House delegation, winning the 1st and 2nd district from the Democrats, but falling 6,000 votes short in the 3rd district. Then in 2022, they won the popular vote convincingly by 12.5 points and swept all 4 districts. As you would expect from the convincing popular vote win, all of the districts went comfortably red. Republicans only won the 1st district in 2020 by 6 singular votes. I kid you not, it was that close. But then in 2022, they won by 20,000 votes. The 2nd district got 6 points redder, and Republicans turned a 6,000 vote loss to a 2,000 vote win in the 3rd district, going up against the incumbent in that seat. And the 4th district, which was already solidly Republican, got even redder in redistricting, and the Republicans won it by almost 40 points. Now this cycle, in a presidential year, it will be interesting to see how the voting patterns in each district shift. In the 1st district, Marionette Miller Meeks had a closer primary than she anticipated. She only won by 12 points out of nowhere against a no-name candidate that was completely underfunded. She is a very underwhelming representative that is really nothing special and pretty establishment, not really that conservative. And this points to the constituents in her district being unsatisfied with her being weak on certain policies and having some bad votes on certain pieces of legislation. This is a seat that Trump won by 3 points, and her opponent is matching her in funding. Considering that she barely won her primary, when it was not even supposed to be close, this could be a seat that Republicans have to spend in to make sure they hold and be closer than I would have originally expected before the primary took place. I still think this is lean Republican. 2 polls had her up, but one of the polls is from 2023 and the other one is all the way back in June. So it's hard to say what the current state of the race is, but I still expect the Republican incumbent in this seat, as underwhelming as she might be, to hold on by about 4 to 6 points once Election Day rolls around. In the 2nd district, the incumbent there, Ashley Hinson, is in a slightly redder Trump district, him having won it by 4.5 points. She is way outpacing her opponent when it comes to how much cash her campaign has on hand. The Democrat she is facing is a terrible fundraiser, and the Republicans doubled the Democratic primary turnout in this seat. So given the Democrats are not showing many signs of life in this seat, I think that Ashley Hinson, who is a pretty decent representative, definitely better than Marionette Miller Meeks in the 1st district, I think that she can win by around the margin she won in 2022, which was about 8 points. The only poll of this district was in June, and she was up by a whopping 19 points, but I do not expect her to win by nearly that margin. So while it is good that she is leading in the only poll, I think that poll is way overinflating her margin of victory, but I still think she holds on. And the proof of that overinflation of her expected performance is the fact that that same poll also has Republicans up in the 3rd district, which is a very competitive race, by 15 points. I do not expect them to win the 3rd district by 15 after barely flipping it in 2022 by 0.6 points. And moving on to the 3rd district, another poll of that seat in July had it tied, pointing to it being an actual toss-up. Democrats are keeping up in the fundraising, they're spending a lot of money, because they see this seat as one of their best opportunities to flip a Republican seat blue, and Democrats had 2,000 more votes than Republicans in the primary, pointing to Democratic voters having actual energy in the seat to turn out and vote, as this is one of the top House battleground seats with lots of focus from both parties, and it's a seat that Trump only won by 0.3 percentage points in 2020. I still think that the edge goes to the Republican incumbent who won in 2022 and flipped the seat, that being Zach Nunn. He took down an incumbent, now he is the incumbent, and Trump likely improves upon his margin statewide, and that includes this district. And no matter how slightly Trump might improve, it will help Zach Nunn down ballot. As of right now, I think he is narrowly going to hold on and win by 1 to 2 points on Election Day. The Republican incumbent in the 4th District, Randy Feenstra, is going to win by a whopping margin, probably get 70% of the vote. It's the only non-competitive, safe Republican seat out of all the 4 in Iowa. So Republicans have the edge in all 3 competitive races. I think they have a strong chance to keep control of all 4 congressional seats in Iowa. Republican voters are going to have to show up to make sure that they hold on to all 3, especially the 3rd District, which will be the most competitive by far. Finally, the state legislature is also on the ballot in the fall. Republicans hold a 64 to 36 House majority and a 34 to 16 Senate majority. The GOP made gains in both chambers in 2022, and they are poised to keep their supermajority in the Senate, since they are only defending one very competitive Republican-held seat, while Democrats have to defend upwards of 4 seats that Republicans could pick up. And in the House, depending on how Trump does, they could either pick up or lose some seats, although it's more likely that they gain, with Trump again likely to improve in the state, and Democrats having about 10 toss-up seats that they currently hold that Republicans are looking to get, versus only about 5 toss-up seats that Republicans hold and Democrats are looking to flip. And overall, this state is just becoming very Republican, as shown by Republicans holding the 4 congressional seats from the state, both Senate seats, massive majorities in the state legislature. Kim Reynolds, the governor, won re-election by nearly 19 points in 2022, receiving 200,000 votes more than her Democratic opponent, which is a large margin of victory in a state like Iowa that has a smaller population. And it was also the 4th straight win at the governorship level for Republicans. And in the midterms, the GOP flipped the Attorney General and Treasurer offices, knocking off the Democratic incumbents in both races and breaking the long-time Democratic control of those offices, especially at the Attorney General level, as the Republican who won defeated an incumbent that had been in office for 28 straight years. So that was an absolutely monumental victory to beat someone that was so entrenched in the political system of Iowa. And Democrats were only able to hang on to one single statewide office, that being the state auditor. And I'm sure next time it's up in 2026, that is also going to fall into Republican hands. The state had been trending to the right for quite a few years. Trump coming onto the stage and reversing Obama's gains in the state by winning the state by large margins in back-to-back election cycles only helped Republicans accelerate the gains and the trends that were favoring them and pushing the state towards them in a positive direction. And now that Republicans have firmly entrenched themselves in control of the state government and of the congressional representation from the state, conservatives can now work to continue to push the state to the right and enact legislation and push policies that will create a conservative culture in Iowa. The first evidence of that was a 6-week abortion ban being passed and implemented into law after legal challenges this year. And that is the first of many conservative agenda items that you hope to see in Iowa being put into action. So let's hope that Donald Trump goes out there and wins Iowa by an even bigger margin than he did in 2016 or 2020, winning by 10 points or more, so that he can have the effect of helping Republicans down ballot hold on to all 4 House seats out of the state and keep their strong advantage in both branches of the state legislature. And luckily for Republicans and conservatives in the state, it is very likely that Trump goes out and does just that.